Okay, so I just finished chambering 338 Lapua, 338 Lapua, and I have a pretty interesting setup here, and I actually called my wife out to show her what has taken place, and then I thought, geez, maybe we ought to make a video of this so guys understand. So if you can bring that camera in here, okay, like I said, we just finished this. This is a BAT HR left hand. Okay, so you need to come in here so you can see this. See what I'm doing here. So again, BAT HR left hand solid bottom. Somewhere we have a video about these solid bottoms. This is by far and away the best way to build any of the really long cartridges with the big bullets. So you realize you have your tenon turned, you have it threaded, you have your shoulder. All of this is indexed so that the center of the rail comes up 12 o'clock top dead center with the center of one of your flutes. This is a fluted barrel. But what I want to show here is, okay, you need to come and see this. So this is a PTG headspace gauge. This is a Dave Manson headspace gauge. This is a piece of Lapua brass from one lot. This is a piece of Lapua brass from a different lot. And this is one with the neck still on it. You notice I have the necks cut off of these. And the reason I have the necks cut off is so I don't have to deal with the neck. It's too deep to go into. And here, I want to show you what this is. So it's 338 Lapua, 368 neck. This is a coated reamer for 300 grain burgers. And this has actually built 7 guns. And I've had really good luck with this reamer. And it's actually, we have another reamer that's identical to this, another brand new one. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is we're going to take this is a PTG go gauge. These are go gauges. I don't use any no-go gauges. And again, that's too deep to go into. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this gauge and we're going to push it in, right? Okay, so you need to be able to see this. Come on over here with the camera. So we're going to push it in. And I want to show you something because for guys who don't understand this, it's very easy to get, and you got to watch because I have a burr right here. There's a burr on that because this isn't truly finished yet. All right, so we're running here at about 151, 149, 150, 151. All right, and that is just an arbitrary measurement because what matters is obviously how it closes on it. But that's one of the things as I'm sneaking up on it, in other words, as I'm finishing the chambering job, I like to keep those numbers, visible and in front of me so that I can see what's going on. Okay, so you notice I have this, the top of the rail coming up 12 o'clock top dead center to my line that's for my flute. And again, I'm not going into all that, how you index that. Okay, so I have that pushed the whole way in, and you have to make sure that the face of your bolt doesn't have anything on it, right? And you notice that the ejector's already out of here. I used to take the extractor out too, but I've done this so many times now, I can feel it. So I just leave the extractor in. Now watch. So you push it in, okay? So I want you to see this. So it doesn't quite drop, almost. In other words, I can feel the smallest little bit of resistance right there. But if I push it, I can get it to drop, right? Okay, so watch. All right, there. Now that time it would drop. You can just see it has a little wee bit of resistance on it, right? Okay, now here's what I want to show you. And again, this is the PTG headspace gauge. Because people think, oh, well, you're using a headspace gauge, so they're all the same, right? Not even close. Some of these cartridges, I have 4 headspace gauges. What I mean is 4 go gauges. And you know what? Once you start getting under 1 thou, none of them are exactly the same. In other words, to have 4 identical things all within less than 1/10 of an inch, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't. So guys who just chamber up with 1 headspace gauge, truthfully, they don't know whether it's on the big side or on the small side, unless they have a whole bunch of them, or unless they have a way of measuring. All right, so that was the PTG gauge, right? Now watch. This is the Dave Manson gauge. So we had some resistance on the PTG one. Now watch this. Okay? And if you work this one just a hair, this one actually has less resistance. Watch. Okay, so the difference, if I had to guess, because you know you can't almost measure this kind of stuff. It's done by feel. If I had to guess, I would say the difference between that PTG gauge and this Dave Manson gauge, the Dave Manson gauge is about probably 5, 6, 7, 10 thousandths. In other words, less than 1,000th smaller, right? So this gauge is a hair smaller than this gauge. Now watch. This is a piece of brass, all right? Nothing done to it except for the fact that I cut the neck off of it. So watch. We'll go back in. And you have to watch, even if there's so much as a hair on this. In other words, this has to be clean or you're not getting valid measurements. So watch. Stick that in. Okay? Now, here's the thing. It's a piece of brass, so you got to realize it's touching it radially also. So when you put that in, okay, this drops much easier. But here's the interesting part, and you got to watch right here. Okay? Right there. I don't know if you can see that movement. That is how much headspace gauge there is. Not how much gauge. That is how much headspace there is now over this piece of brass. In other words, I want to make sure I'm explaining this right. So this, watch here, you're looking in the wrong place. This is bigger, right? This is a hair smaller. This piece of brass is a hair smaller yet, just a little wee bit. It just so happens, because I have these laid out, because I had just already done this. This piece of brass, watch. Okay, put it in there. And again, here's where you feel it, right here. This piece of brass, and if anything, I switched them. Okay, I thought that this one was smaller yet. This one's a hair bigger. So I put them in the wrong order. So look. So it's this way. In other words, bigger, smaller, smaller, smaller. And then this one, actually, this one does not have the neck cut off. Watch this one. And so you put it in there. And again, I could feel it. Again, that's radially, right? But now, watch. Watch right here. Again, I don't know if you can see that. But see the slop? And then it's, when I say slop, boy, it's not much. I mean, there might be 2 thou, maybe. And I have a way, actually, of checking that. I wasn't going to show you this, but maybe I will. So, okay. This is what I'm saying. Bigger, smaller, 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 smallest. And if you had more pieces of brass, it is possible, you know, you would have one that's even smaller yet. And here's one of the ways that you check. Okay? These are shims. And so that's a 3. This is a 2. This is a 1. So 1 thou thickness. So 1 thou, 2 thou, 3 thou, 5 thou. And what you can do, you notice the shape of these. You can take that shim and put it in the face of the bolt. In other words, if you want to see how much over and above it is, and I'm not going to do it, you take one of these shims, stick it in the face of the bolt, put your piece of brass back in the chamber, close it, and then you can immediately figure out, well, how much, this smallest piece of brass, how much space is there? Is there 1 thou? Is there 2 thou? Is there 3 thou? You can make a 4. You realize by the time you get to 4, considering what we're doing here, by the time you get to 4, that's huge. In other words, you do not want it to take 4. But even I have up to 5. So you could actually put a 5 in there. But if you put a 5 in there and you go to try to close the bolt, it should not close at all. Because that would be excessive headspace. That's when you get into no-go gauges rather than go gauges. But again, I only use go, G-O gauges, because I have these shims. Now, one last thing before we quit this, because I wasn't going to get deep into this. I want to take this off of here and I want to show you one other thing. You need to be right here. Okay, so, oh wait, actually I should have showed you that too. Might just as well while we're here. You notice that when you have threads that actually fit, okay, watch this. So I want to show you something right here. First of all, I'm going to pull it longitudinally. Watch this. There's 0. Absolute zero. There's nothing there. There's not even 1/10,000th. But watch out here on the end. Okay? So I have that much end play. Now watch. I'm going to start to thread it on. And you need to be able to see what's going on here. Okay? Now watch. Now I have that much end play. Okay? And again, there is zero there. So you bring it on around. Okay? Now, I mean, you can feel it. I know that you can't see this, but you can feel that. There's still a little wee bit right there. Okay, go a little bit further. It's almost imperceptible now. Okay, a little bit further. Okay, same deal. I can feel it. In other words, there's still a little wee bit. Now watch what's going to happen. And I'm only going to do this hand tight. So you just bring it up. Now it's like one piece. It is if you have your shoulder perfect, if the face of the receiver is perfect, if everything is perfect, it just becomes, it's like one piece of metal, which is really cool. Okay, now that's not what I wanted to show you right here. Okay, so I'm going to take it off. You need to be looking down here. They don't need to see my ugly face. Okay, they want to see what I'm trying to teach them. All right, so watch this. Okay, so look. So that's how the headspace gauge fits, right? And you have a little bit around the gauge. In other words, it won't go in any further. Obviously, it's a piece of steel. This is how you determine, you know, what your headspace is. But there's a little wee bit of wobble there on that gauge, right? So now, go to this Dave Manson one. And same thing. There's just a little wee bit radially. But watch this. So now I'm working up. I'm going, okay. Now there's no movement. I mean, look at that. It literally puts suction on it. Okay, watch. Okay, I'm reaching over to get the next one. Look at that. In other words, it fits so perfect that if it was any more perfect, it wouldn't go. In other words, you wouldn't be able to get that piece of brass in there. And this is not necessarily either. This is not I'm not complimenting what I'm doing. You have to realize he cut the reamer to match this brass, because that's the way I do it. I send it in dummy rounds. And in other words, the reamer matches the brass, which then matches the chamber, as close to perfection. Look. I actually even had to push on that one. Watch. There it is. You see it push the oil out? I don't know if you can see that or not. But I may not even be able to get that back out of there. There, okay, wait. Look. I mean, you think about this. When you have a chamber that is perfectly matched to your brass, whenever that cartridge goes off in that chamber, there's no room for it to expand. In other words, it can't work harden if it doesn't move. And that's not technically correct. It will work harden after 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 shots. You can't subject a piece of brass to 65,000 psi over and over again, and it's going to work harden even if it doesn't move a little bit. But the issue is when it fits so tight that you can actually see it pushing the air bubbles out in the oil around it, when it fits that perfectly, there's no slop. And so if there's no slop, there's not going to be any work hardening. And the other issue with that is this is partly why that you buy custom guns, at least why I would be buying custom guns. This is the reason, one of the reasons why you buy custom guns that most people don't understand is that when that goes in there and fits that perfect, if this chamber is perfectly in line with the bore, which again, that's a whole separate subject. If everything is lined up square, and if everything is radial, the whole deal, that bullet has to go up the center of the bore. In other words, it's not at an angle anyway. It's going to go straight into the rifling, and it's going to go straight up the bore, and it's just going to shoot. The gun's going to shoot, and that's the whole point of all of this. Anyway, I didn't really have time for all this, but it's kind of cool how this turned out, and I've seen this before, don't get me wrong, but it turned out in such a way that I'm like, hey, I wanted to show her, and then I realized, wait, if I want to show her, maybe you guys want to see it too. Anyways, thanks a lot. See you next time.